I rubbed my thumb over the tarnished brass key in my palm, its edges worn smooth from decades of use. Outside Grandma Eleanor's house, the Grand Victorian that had withstood a century of Blackwell family dramas, vehicles lined the curving driveway. My cousin's luxury cars gleamed under the winter sun, a stark contrast to my dented Honda parked at the very end. "Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," Cousin Madeline announced as I stepped into the foyer. Her diamond earrings caught the light from the chandelier, casting tiny rainbows against the dark wood paneling. I brushed snowflakes from my coat, keenly aware of the hole in the sleeve I'd hastily sewn that morning. I was helping Grandma with her medication. "Of course you were," Uncle William chimed in from the parlor doorway, his voice dripping with disdain. "Always the devoted granddaughter, aren't you, Cassandra?" My name is Cassandra Harlow, and for the past 8 months, I'd become intimately familiar with every creak of this old house's floorboards during my overnight stays with Grandma Eleanor. I knew which step on the grand staircase groaned underfoot at 3 a.m. when I rushed to help her to the bathroom. I knew which windows let in drafts that aggravated her arthritis. I knew the exact temperature at which to serve her chamomile tea to help ease her into sleep. What my family knew was that Eleanor Blackwell was worth millions, and at 93, her time was running short. I hung my coat in the closet and made my way toward the parlor where voices rose and fell in heated discussion. Inside, my mother Rebecca sat perched on the edge of an antique settee, her fingers nervously twisting the pearl necklace Grandma had given her decades ago. Uncle William's wife Patricia stood by the fireplace, one manicured hand resting on the mantel next to the collection of Blackwell family photographs. "We need to discuss the Pembroke property," Uncle William was saying, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he'd perfected as CEO of the family's manufacturing company. "Mother can't possibly manage it anymore, and it's just sitting there collecting dust and property taxes." "She loves that summer home," my mother protested weakly. "She's not going to agree to sell it." Cousin Richard, Uncle William's oldest son, leaned forward in Grandma's favorite armchair. "She doesn't need to know. The power of attorney gives us the authority to make these decisions for her benefit." I stopped in the doorway, my presence unnoticed by the family members too engrossed in their financial planning. "You can't sell Pembroke without consulting Grandma," I said, causing several heads to turn toward me. "She's still of sound mind. The power of attorney doesn't override her wishes." Uncle William's face reddened slightly. "Cassandra, I know you've appointed yourself Mother's primary caretaker, but these decisions require financial expertise she clearly trusts me to provide. The power of attorney is for medical emergencies," I finished for him. "I drafted it with Grandma's lawyer, remember? Or did you conveniently forget that I passed the bar last year?" The tension in the room thickened. My legal career was a perpetual disappointment to the family. I'd chosen public defense work over joining Uncle William's corporate team, a decision that had marked me as the family's black sheep long before I became Grandma's caretaker. "We're just trying to simplify things," Aunt Patricia interjected with manufactured sweetness. "Your grandmother has so many properties and accounts to manage. It's overwhelming her at this stage of life." "Actually," I countered, "we reviewed her portfolio last week. She understands her assets perfectly well." A pregnant silence fell over the room until Madeline broke it with a theatrical sigh. "Can we just get back to discussing the holiday schedule? Who's hosting Christmas Eve now that Grandma obviously can't?" The casual dismissal of Grandma Eleanor as if she were already gone made my blood boil, but I bit my tongue. This wasn't the time to make enemies. I'd learned enough about my family's tactics to know when to pick my battles. "I should check on her," I said, turning toward the grand staircase. She was resting when I left for the pharmacy. Don't wake her on our account, Uncle William called after me, but I was already halfway up the stairs, clutching the bag of medications that had been my excuse to escape the vultures downstairs. Eleanor Blackwell's bedroom was at the end of the long hallway on the second floor, a master suite that overlooked the sprawling gardens now dormant under a blanket of snow. I knocked softly before entering, finding my grandmother propped up against a mountain of pillows, her silver hair framing a face still handsome despite the deep lines etched by time. "Did you get them to stop plotting my financial ruin?" she asked, her voice surprisingly strong for someone who, according to my uncle, was too frail to manage her own affairs. I smiled, setting the pharmacy bag on her nightstand. "You heard all that? These walls have witnessed 5 generations of Blackwell scheming, Cassie. They have a way of carrying voices to interested parties." Her blue eyes, still sharp as cut crystal, twinkled with mischief. "William always did speak too loudly when he thinks he's winning." I pulled up the chair I'd spent countless nights in, reaching for her wrinkled hand. "They're talking about selling Pembroke." "Of course they are. Prime waterfront property with historical significance? William's been eyeing it since he was in short pants." She squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. "Hand me my ledger, would you, dear?" I reached for the leather-bound book she kept in her bedside drawer. It was old-fashioned, much like Grandma herself, filled with her meticulous handwriting documenting accounts, properties, and investments. "You had your pill at noon?" I asked, glancing at the organized array of medication bottles. "Yes, and I don't need another until dinner." She flipped through the ledger pages with practiced precision. "What I need is for you to listen carefully, Cassandra." Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. Eleanor Blackwell didn't use my full name unless the matter was deadly serious. "I've watched them circle like vultures for years," she continued, her finger tracing a line of figures in her book. "Always asking about the will, making suggestions about simplifying my estate." She looked up at me, her expression hardening. "But you're the only one who asks how I'm feeling rather than what I'm worth." I felt my cheeks warm. "You're my grandmother. That's what family is supposed to do." Supposed to, yes. But the Blackwells have always been more interested in legacy than love. She closed the ledger with a decisive snap. "I've made some changes recently. Changes William and the others won't appreciate." A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. "Grandma, you don't have to." "I don't have to do anything except die on my own terms, with my affairs in order," she cut me off briskly. "And that's precisely what I intend to do. Millicent Blackwell didn't raise a fool, and I'm not starting now." Millicent, Grandma's mother, had been a formidable woman who had kept the family business afloat during the Depression while her husband was ill. I'd grown up hearing stories about her shrewdness and resolve. "Mr. Thornfield will be visiting tomorrow," Grandma continued, referring to her attorney. "I want you to be here when he comes." A knock at the door interrupted us. My mother entered, carrying a tray with tea. "I thought you might be awake," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "The family's downstairs discussing holiday plans." "How festive of them to plan my last Christmas without bothering to consult me," Grandma replied dryly. "Tell me, Rebecca, was it William's idea to sell Pembroke, or did Richard finally gather the courage to make a suggestion of his own?" My mother's smile faltered. "No one's selling anything, Mother. We're just exploring options. The only option regarding Pembroke is whether I'll spend 1 week or 2 there this summer." Grandma's tone held no room for argument. "Assuming I'm still above ground by then." "Don't talk like that," my mother replied automatically, setting down the tea tray with trembling hands. Grandma fixed her with a penetrating stare. Death doesn't scare me, Rebecca. Pretending it isn't approaching would be foolish at my age. She gestured toward the chair beside me. Sit. Have tea with your daughter and me. Unless you're needed downstairs for more exploring. My mother hesitated, then perched on the edge of the chair as if ready to flee at any moment. I poured the tea into the delicate china cups that had been part of Grandma's wedding set nearly 70 years ago. Cassandra was just telling me about her work at the legal aid clinic, Grandma said, accepting her cup with steady hands. Helping those immigrant families fight their deportation cases. Important work. My mother's expression tightened slightly. Yes, well. I'm sure it's very fulfilling. The disapproval in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. My career choices had always been a source of tension between us. She had wanted me to follow the Blackwell tradition of corporate success, not what she viewed as thankless charity work. It is, I replied, refusing to be baited. We won the Martinez case last week. They get to stay together as a family. Wonderful, Grandma said with genuine warmth. Family should stay together when they deserve to. The emphasis wasn't lost on either my mother or me. We sipped our tea in uncomfortable silence until voices rose from downstairs, punctuated by the distinctive sound of Uncle William's authoritative tone. My mother stood abruptly. I should go see what's happening. Always running to William's side, Grandma murmured as the door closed behind my mother. She never did learn to stand on her own. She's trying, I said, though without much conviction. Trying my patience, perhaps. Grandma set her cup down with a decisive clink. Rebecca had potential once, before she let your father and then William convince her that compliance was her greatest virtue. The assessment was harsh but not entirely unfair. After my father left us when I was 12, my mother had increasingly deferred to Uncle William's guidance in all matters financial and practical. Help me to the window, dear, Grandma requested, pushing aside her blankets. I want to see my garden before the sun sets. I helped her to the cushioned window seat, draping a cashmere throw over her thin shoulders. Outside, the formal gardens were beautiful even in winter dormancy, their structured paths and hedges outlined by snow. I planted those rose bushes the year your grandfather died, she said, pointing to a section near the stone wall. Everyone told me I was foolish to start such a project at my age. That was 15 years ago. She turned to me, her gaze intense. Never let anyone tell you what you're capable of, Cassandra. Especially family. Is that why you asked me to be here when Mr. Thornfield visits? I asked carefully. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply want my favorite granddaughter present when I make the most significant decisions of my twilight years. I'm your only granddaughter, I reminded her. Which makes the competition remarkably easy to win. She patted my hand, then grew serious again. There's something you should know before tomorrow. Something I've never told anyone in the family. I leaned closer as she lowered her voice, despite the empty room. Pembroke isn't just a summer house. It sits on land that contains more value than William or the others realize. She reached into the pocket of her robe and withdrew a small key on a faded ribbon. There's a box in my closet, behind the winter coats. Bring it to me, please. I did as she asked, finding an old metal lockbox tucked away as she described. The key slid into the lock smoothly, and Grandma lifted the lid to reveal a stack of yellow documents. These are the original land surveys from when your grandfather purchased Pembroke in 1952, she explained, lifting out a folded paper. What William doesn't know, what no one knows except me now, is that there was an additional survey done in 1973. She handed me the document, which I unfolded carefully. It was a geological assessment with technical language I didn't fully understand, but certain phrases jumped out: significant deposits and unexploited resources. There's a vein of rare earth minerals running through the back 20 acres, Grandma said quietly. Your grandfather discovered it by accident and had it surveyed privately. We decided to keep it quiet, to preserve the land rather than exploit it. I looked up in shock. This could be worth millions. Possibly tens of millions, depending on current market values. She reclaimed the paper, returning it to the box. William would have that land stripped bare within months if he knew. That's why he can never get his hands on Pembroke. The realization of what she was entrusting me with felt suddenly heavy. Grandma, I don't know if I should. You should know everything about what you're protecting, she interrupted firmly. I'm not asking you to keep secrets forever, Cassandra. Just until everything is properly settled. She locked the box again and pressed the key into my palm. Keep this with you. Not in your purse or your coat, on your person. As I slipped the key into my jeans pocket, voices rose from downstairs once more. The family meeting was clearly becoming heated. You should go rescue your mother, Grandma said with a sigh. William bullies her when there's no one to intervene. I helped her back to bed, making sure she was comfortable before reluctantly heading downstairs to face the family fray once more. The weight of the key in my pocket felt like a secret talisman, connecting me to Grandma's trust in a way no inheritance ever could. In the parlor, I found Uncle William standing over my mother, who was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue while Cousin Madeline looked on with barely concealed impatience. What's going on? I asked, moving to sit beside my mother. Nothing that concerns you, Uncle William replied dismissively. Family business matters. I'm family, I pointed out. And a lawyer. A public defender, Madeline corrected with a sniff. Hardly relevant to estate planning. I bit back a sharp retort. Mom? Are you okay? She nodded unconvincingly. We were just discussing the holiday rotation and things got a bit intense. William thinks Mother should be moved to Sunset Pines after Christmas, Aunt Patricia explained, naming an upscale assisted living facility in the next county. Your mother is being emotional about it. Grandma doesn't need assisted living, I said firmly. She needs assistance in her own home, which she's getting. From you? Richard scoffed. You have a full-time job, Cassandra. You can't provide proper round-the-clock care. I've hired nurses for when I'm at work, I countered. Grandma is comfortable in her home. She's made her wishes very clear about staying here. Uncle William paced the length of the Persian rug, his signet ring catching the light as he gestured emphatically. Mother isn't thinking clearly about her long-term needs. Sunset Pines has excellent medical facilities on site. And conveniently frees up this house to be sold? I suggested, unable to keep the edge from my voice. The sudden silence in the room confirmed my suspicion. That's really what this is about, isn't it? I continued, anger rising in my chest. You want to liquidate Grandma's assets while she's still alive to make your eventual inheritance cleaner. Now see here, Uncle William started, his face flushing. No, you see here, I interrupted, standing to face him directly. Grandma has made her wishes perfectly clear. She wants to remain in her home. As the person who holds her medical power of attorney, I'm honoring those wishes. And before you try to challenge that legally, remember that I am a lawyer, and I will fight you every step of the way. The room fell into stunned silence. My mother stared at me with a mixture of horror and admiration, while Madeline and Richard exchanged glances that suggested I'd just confirmed their worst opinions of me. Uncle William recovered first, straightening his tie as if physically collecting his dignity. I see Cassandra has appointed herself Mother's guardian angel. How convenient that puts her in position to influence any changes to Mother's estate planning. The insinuation hung in the air like poison. That's a serious accusation, William, I said evenly, though my heart hammered in my chest. Especially from someone who's actively trying to sell Grandma's properties without her knowledge. I'm doing what's best for the family. For your family, perhaps, I cut in. Not for Grandma. My mother finally found her voice. Please, both of you, stop this. Mother wouldn't want us fighting. Mother would want us to respect her wishes, I replied, not taking my eyes off Uncle William. Which is exactly what I intend to do. Uncle William's phone rang, breaking the standoff. He glanced at the screen, then excused himself to take the call in the study. The rest of the family dispersed, murmuring about dinner plans and hotel arrangements, leaving my mother and me alone in the parlor. You shouldn't antagonize him, she said quietly once everyone was out of earshot. William controls the family trust. And that gives him the right to steamroll over Grandma's wishes? I asked. My mother sighed, twisting her pearl necklace again. You don't understand the complexities of the family finances, Cassandra. There are considerations. I understand perfectly well, I interrupted. I see the monthly statements when I help Grandma with her accounts. I know what's at stake. The weight of the key in my pocket seemed to grow heavier. If my mother knew about Pembroke's secret value, would she still side with Uncle William? I wasn't confident enough in her backbone to risk finding out. Mr. Thornfield is coming tomorrow, I said instead. Grandma wants me present for the meeting. My mother's expression flickered with concern. Why? What's she planning? I don't know, I lied, hating the necessity of it. Probably just updating her healthcare directives. She seemed to accept this, though not entirely without suspicion. Just be careful, Cassie. William won't take kindly to any surprises. I'm not afraid of Uncle William, I replied, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. My uncle wielded his power in the family like a weapon, and he had decades of practice. As evening settled over the house, I helped prepare dinner with the housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, who had served the Blackwell family since before I was born. She provided a welcome buffer between me and the rest of the family, filling the kitchen with cheerful chatter about neighborhood gossip as we arranged Grandma's meal on a tray. She's been more alert this past week, Mrs. Finch commented as she folded a napkin into an elaborate shape. Having you here has done her a world of good. I wish I could do more, I said, arranging Grandma's medication beside her water glass. Mrs. Finch gave me a knowing look. You do more than the rest of them combined, Miss Cassandra. Don't think she doesn't notice. I carried the tray upstairs while the rest of the family gathered in the formal dining room, grateful for the excuse to avoid another tense meal. Grandma was awake, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed what looked like legal documents. Dinner and a floor show, she remarked as I entered, nodding toward the window that overlooked the driveway. William's been pacing out there on his phone for 20 minutes. Must be important business. I set the tray on the bedside table and glanced out. Uncle William was indeed stalking back and forth, gesturing animatedly as he spoke into his phone. Probably plotting his next move, I said, helping Grandma sit up properly. Oh, undoubtedly. William never did learn the value of patience. She set aside her papers and accepted the tray. Did you and your mother have a nice chat after I sent you downstairs? I hesitated, then decided honesty was the best policy. Uncle William wants to move you to Sunset Pines after Christmas. Grandma snorted inelegantly. Of course he does. That's where wealthy families store their inconvenient elders while waiting for them to die. She speared a piece of chicken with unexpected vigor. I'll be carried out of this house feet first, Cassandra. Not a moment sooner. I told him as much, I assured her. Though perhaps with less colorful imagery. She chuckled, then grew serious. And how did your mother respond to all this? The question made me uncomfortable. She wasn't very committal. Rebecca never could stand up to William, Grandma said with a sigh. Even as children, she deferred to him despite being 3 years older. It's why your grandfather left William in charge of the company instead of her. She took a sip of water, eyeing me over the rim of her glass. You're much stronger than your mother, Cassandra. More like me. The comparison warmed me in ways I hadn't expected. I've always admired your strength, Grandma. Remember that admiration tomorrow when the family shows their true colors. She nodded toward the documents she'd been reviewing. Mr. Thornfield's visit will not be received well by certain parties. You're changing your will? I guessed, though I already knew the answer. I'm ensuring that my wishes are followed after I'm gone, she corrected. And that those who truly care for me are properly acknowledged. The way she looked at me left little doubt as to whom she considered truly caring. Grandma, I don't want you to feel like you have to. I don't have to do anything, she interrupted briskly. I want to. There's a difference. She patted my hand. Now, be a dear and read to me after dinner. That new mystery novel on the nightstand. We left off just as the detective was about to confront the scheming nephew. The parallel to our current situation wasn't lost on me, and I couldn't help but smile at her choice of reading material. Some things about Eleanor Blackwell never changed, including her flair for the dramatic. As I opened the book and began to read, I tried to push away thoughts of tomorrow's meeting and what it might mean for the family's fragile dynamics. The key to the lockbox felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket, a tangible reminder of the secrets and revelations that lay ahead. Outside, the snow began to fall again, blanketing the world in white silence as night descended on the Blackwell estate. The morning of Mr. Thornfield's visit dawned gray and hushed, snow still falling in gentle flurries outside Grandma's bedroom window. I'd spent the night in the adjoining room, originally designed as a ladies' dressing room but converted to a guest bedroom decades ago, and rose early to help Grandma prepare for the meeting. The blue dress, she instructed as I opened her closet. And my pearls. I want to look respectable when I throw the cat among the pigeons. I smiled as I helped her dress, noticing how her hands shook slightly despite her determined expression. She insisted on proper makeup too, powder, a touch of rouge, and her signature coral lipstick. Do I look like a doddering old woman ready for the nursing home? She asked, examining her reflection in the vanity mirror. You look formidable, I answered truthfully. Good. She straightened the collar of her dress. Because if my children and grandchildren want a battle, they'll get one they won't soon forget. Mrs. Finch brought up breakfast, toast, soft-boiled egg, and coffee for Grandma, stronger coffee for me, and informed us that Mr. Thornfield had called to confirm his 10 a.m. arrival. The family's gathering in the morning room, she added with a meaningful look. Mr. Williams called everyone together. No doubt to present a unified front, Grandma mused, stirring sugar into her coffee. William always did think numbers equaled strength. She looked up at Mrs. Finch. Has my daughter arrived yet? Ms. Rebecca came in about 20 minutes ago, ma'am. Grandma nodded, satisfied. Make sure Mr. Thornfield is shown directly to my bedroom when he arrives. No detours through the morning room gauntlet. Mrs. Finch nodded and withdrew, leaving us to finish breakfast in companionable silence. I could sense Grandma gathering her strength, mentally preparing for the confrontation ahead. At precisely 10 a.m., Mr. Thornfield was announced by Mrs. Finch. He entered Grandma's bedroom with the confidence of a man who had been a trusted advisor for decades, a tall, distinguished figure with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Eleanor," he greeted her warmly, taking her outstretched hand. "You're looking well." "Liar," she replied with affection. "But I appreciate the sentiment, Arthur." They exchanged pleasantries for a few minutes before he turned to me with a nod of recognition. "Ms. Harlow. I understand you'll be joining us for today's business." At my request, Grandma confirmed before I could respond. "Cassandra holds my medical power of attorney and has been my primary caregiver these past months. She should be fully informed." Mr. Thornfield didn't seem surprised by this explanation. He settled into the chair I offered and opened his leather portfolio, extracting several official-looking documents. "I've prepared everything according to your instructions, Eleanor," he said, his tone shifting to professional formality. "The amendments to your will, the updated trust documents, and the property transfer paperwork." Grandma nodded in satisfaction. "Excellent. And the special provisions we discussed?" "All included, exactly as you specified." He glanced at me. "I assume Ms. Harlow is aware of the general nature of these changes?" "Cassandra knows I'm making adjustments to my estate planning," Grandma said carefully. "The specifics will be revealed to the family together, as we discussed." Before Mr. Thornfield could respond, a sharp knock on the door preceded Uncle William's entrance without waiting for permission. My mother hovered anxiously behind him. "Mother, what's this I hear about a meeting with your attorney?" Uncle William demanded, his gaze flicking dismissively over Mr. Thornfield before landing accusingly on me. Why wasn't the family informed? Grandma's expression didn't change, but I noticed her fingers tightening almost imperceptibly on the arm of her chair. "Because it doesn't concern the family, William." "Not yet." "Anything involving your estate concerns the family," he countered, stepping further into the room. The rest of the relatives had gathered in the hallway, peering in with undisguised curiosity. "Eleanor has every right to private legal counsel," Mr. Thornfield interjected smoothly. "And to conduct her affairs as she sees fit." Uncle William's jaw tightened. "Arthur, with all due respect, my mother is 93 years old and in declining health. We have concerns about her capacity to make significant legal decisions at this time." The implication hung in the air like a threat. I felt my face flush with anger, but before I could respond, Grandma let out a short, sharp laugh. "Declining health? Is that what you're calling it now?" She fixed her son with a steely gaze. "I assure you, William, my mind is perfectly sound. Sound enough to recognize a transparent attempt to question my competence when you suspect decisions might not go in your favor." Uncle William had the grace to look momentarily abashed, but he rallied quickly. "That's not what I meant, Mother. We're all concerned about your well-being." "If you're concerned about my mental capacity," Grandma continued as if he hadn't spoken, "Mr. Thornfield has taken the precaution of bringing Dr. Mercer with him today. She's waiting downstairs, a geriatric specialist with expertise in assessing cognitive function in the elderly." She smiled thinly. "I passed her examination with flying colors last week, but I'm happy to demonstrate my competence again if it will put your mind at ease." The calculated precision of her countermove was breathtaking. Uncle William looked as if he'd been struck. "That won't be necessary," he backpedaled. "I just think family should be present for important legal decisions." "And so you shall be," Grandma assured him with deceptive mildness. "Mr. Thornfield and I are nearly finished here. Then I'll have Mrs. Finch summon everyone to the library for a reading." "A reading?" My mother spoke for the first time, her voice tense. "Mother, what exactly are you doing?" Grandma's expression softened slightly as she looked at her daughter. "Putting my affairs in order, Rebecca. Something I should have done years ago." I could see the family exchanging glances in the hallway, whispering urgently. Cousin Richard pushed forward to stand beside Uncle William. "Grandmother, if you're making changes to your will, the family has a right to know beforehand." "Actually, you don't," I said, unable to stay silent any longer. "A will is a private legal document until the testator chooses to disclose its contents." "Stay out of this, Cassandra," Uncle William snapped. "This is family business." "Cassandra is family," Grandma said firmly. "And she stays." She looked pointedly toward the door. "Unlike those who interrupt private meetings without being invited." For a tense moment, I thought Uncle William might refuse to leave. Then, with visible effort, he controlled himself. "Very well, Mother. We'll wait for you in the library." He gestured for the others to follow him, closing the door with more force than necessary. Mr. Thornfield let out a low whistle. That was rather dramatic, even for William. "He senses the wind changing direction," Grandma replied, reaching for the documents he'd brought. "Let's proceed quickly, before he thinks of another interruption." For the next half hour, I watched as Grandma carefully reviewed and signed multiple documents, Mr. Thornfield explaining each one in detail. Most were written in dense legal language, but I understood enough to realize she was making significant changes to her estate planning, establishing new trusts, modifying the existing family trust, and completely restructuring her will. Finally, she signed the last page with a flourish and handed the pen back to Mr. Thornfield. "There. It's done." "Are you sure about all this, Eleanor?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "It's going to cause quite a stir." Grandma's smile was serene. "I've spent too many years worrying about keeping the peace, Arthur. At my age, I've earned the right to make waves." Mr. Thornfield nodded, gathering the documents and securing them in his portfolio. "Then let's not keep the family waiting any longer." I helped Grandma rise from her chair, offering my arm for support as we made our slow way toward the library. Mr. Thornfield walked ahead of us, his back straight, every inch the professional about to deliver news that would permanently alter the Blackwell family dynamics. "Are you ready for this?" I asked Grandma quietly as we approached the library doors. She patted my hand, her eyes bright with determination. "More than ready, dear. Some reckonings are long overdue." Inside the library, the family had arranged themselves like opposing armies preparing for battle. Uncle William, Aunt Patricia, and their children occupied one side of the room, while my mother sat alone on the other, looking small and uncertain. Mrs. Finch had set up a comfortable chair for Grandma near the massive oak desk where Mr. Thornfield was arranging his papers. A hush fell as we entered. I helped Grandma to her seat, then took my place standing behind her chair, one hand resting protectively on its carved back. "Thank you all for gathering," Mr. Thornfield began formally. "As Eleanor's attorney for over 30 years, I've been asked to share some important changes to her estate planning." He adjusted his glasses, looking around the room. "Before I proceed, I want to make it absolutely clear that Eleanor has been medically certified as fully competent to make these decisions, and all documents have been executed with proper legal oversight. Uncle William shifted impatiently. Yes, the formalities are noted, Arthur. Get to the point. The point, William, Mr. Thornfield replied with a hint of steel in his voice, is that your mother has made significant changes to how her estate will be distributed after her passing, and some of those changes take effect immediately. The tension in the room thickened. I could see Madeline gripping her husband's arm, while Richard leaned forward, a vein visibly pulsing in his forehead. As you know, Mr. Thornfield continued, the Blackwell Family Trust has historically been structured to pass primarily to the eldest son, with provisions for other children and their descendants. He glanced at Uncle William. This arrangement dates back to a time when such patrilineal succession was customary, though not legally required. Uncle William's expression darkened. Are you suggesting Mother has changed the terms of a trust that's existed for 3 generations? Not suggesting, William. Stating. Mr. Thornfield extracted a document from his portfolio. As the sole remaining trustor, Eleanor has exercised her right to modify the trust's terms. Effective immediately, the trust will be administered by a professional trustee, the firm of Watkins and Associates, rather than by any family member. A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only by Uncle William's sharp intake of breath. That's impossible, he finally managed. The trust specifies. The trust specifies that the primary trustor, currently your mother, may modify its terms at her discretion, Mr. Thornfield interrupted. A clause your grandfather wisely included, which you might have noticed had you ever read the full document rather than simply enjoying its benefits. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling at Mr. Thornfield's pointed remark. Uncle William's face had turned an alarming shade of crimson. Furthermore, Mr. Thornfield continued, adjusting his glasses, regarding the specific properties in Eleanor's personal estate, there are several significant changes. He cleared his throat. The main estate house and grounds will pass directly to Cassandra Harlow, along with all contents and associated accounts. The room erupted. Uncle William surged to his feet. This is outrageous. Mother, you can't possibly. I can and I have, Grandma interrupted, her voice cutting through the chaos with remarkable strength. Cassandra is the only one who has shown genuine concern for my well-being rather than my assets. She has earned this inheritance through love and care, not entitlement. My mother's face had gone pale, her fingers clutching her pearls so tightly I feared the strand might break. The Pembroke property, Mr. Thornfield continued when the noise subsided, will also pass to Cassandra, with strict provisions prohibiting its sale or development for a minimum of 50 years. I felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Grandma had done. Uncle William looked like he might have a stroke. And what about the rest of us? Richard demanded. Your actual blood relatives? Grandma's gaze swept the room, cool and assessing. You'll each receive a modest trust. Enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. The remainder will establish a foundation for environmental conservation and legal aid for the underprivileged, causes Cassandra has championed while the rest of you were counting my silver. Silence fell, heavy with shock and betrayal. Then Uncle William pointed an accusing finger at me. You manipulated her. Poisoned her against her own family while swooping in to claim everything for yourself. That's quite enough, Grandma said with deadly calm. The only manipulation has been your transparent attempts to sell my properties and control my assets while I'm still breathing. As the family dissolved into bitter accusations, I caught Grandma's eye. She reached for my hand, squeezing it with surprising strength, her expression serene amid the storm she'd unleashed. "Well done, my dear," she whispered. "For both of us."